And we welcome you back to the starting lineup, and delighted to have you with us on this absolutely beautiful Friday in the Ozarks. Ned Reynolds along with
Scott Purrier.
And the starting lineup is brought to you by Play It Again Sports in the Fremont Shopping Center, Battlefield and Fremont Springfield, Swing Right Golf at the south end of Campbell Avenue, a little bit north of Nixa, by Citizens Bank of Rogersville with two locales, one adjacent to Highland Springs and the other in Rogersville itself, and by Marshfield Chevrolet at the I-44 exit, and then a couple of left turns, and you are right there at Marshfield Chevrolet. Special guest is with us.
Yeah, we're very pleased to have with us Max Gifford. He is the play-by-play, one of the play-by-play voices for the Biloxi Shuckers of the Southern League AA League, the Milwaukee Brewers affiliate. Of course, we've known him better as the son of Matt Gifford, the longtime Springfield Cardinals GM back in the day. Matt is now at the Director of Operations at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Max, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
You betcha. Absolutely. We just kind of wanted to, it's summertime. It's time to tell stories. And we kind of wanted to get into the story of Max Gifford and what the heck did a guy that grew up around minor league baseball with his dad decide he wanted to get into baseball play-by-play now in the minor leagues. Kind of take us through your journey.
Well, that's how you know news is slow, right? Especially when you got to start talking to me. But when it's summer, that means it's baseball season. So I guess we really can't complain around Missouri and even around Mississippi at this time. Baseball season in full swing. They're all about it, whether it's, for the Biloxi Shuckers or they're big on college baseball down here in SEC country. But to answer your question, I was very fortunate, like you said, that I grew up around baseball, grew up going to Hammons Field in Springfield pretty much on a weekly basis down there. And I was just so fortunate to see how cool it was every day to be at a ballpark. And I think that's what I took away most from my dad was just the experience of getting to wake up every morning and to go to a ballpark and to watch baseball every day for free. I said, you know what, that would be a pretty cool thing to do one day. And then not only that, but to hear amazing guys that were, the voices for the team, and whether that was on the radio side or the TV side. I got to hear Ned on the TV side. That was always a fantastic time. And there's pictures of me when I was younger with Jeff Levering in Springfield booth when he's wearing cargo shorts and I'm in, a button-up sitting next to him with a headset on. And those are the things that I remember the most about being down there in Springfield. And again, my dad taught me from a very early age that, no matter how old you are, it's a really cool experience to get to go to the ballpark every day.
And we should mention Art Haynes would normally be with us now, but Art is on his way to receive an award in Carolina. I know, Max, you're a big Art Haynes fan, and you missed the chance to talk to Art, but he is receiving the Missouri Broadcaster of the Year award for 2025, but he would love this interview as well.
Indeed. Yeah. Max, you did not, correct me if I'm wrong, you did not finish at Glendale, though, with your high school. Am I correct in that?
I did not. I finished up a proud Pershing Middle School before we ended up moving to St. Louis. But yes, I would have gone to Glendale High School.
Now, where does Syracuse fit into this whole thing?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, Syracuse would have been in the middle of after high school, and then kind of before this, spent 3.5 years up there in upstate New York. Quite cold up there. But we braved the elements for the 3.5 years, graduated a semester early. And that was really the foundation of my broadcasting experience. I'll be honest, I didn't really get much experience in high school, but I always knew since I was probably 8 years old that this was something that I wanted to try and pursue. And the cool thing about Syracuse is despite it being a very competitive environment, everyone starts the same place there. So I said, all right, if I haven't learned anything, I might as well learn from some of the best, young broadcasters out there and some of the best professors out there as well. So all the alums and my peers that I got to work with at Syracuse really, sort of set the bar for where I am right now. And they're still the people I look up to now that continue to push me now, even though I'm still in a job.
As you mentioned, you grew up here, went to Pershing, were headed to go to Glendale if you stayed here for high school. Then your dad, Matt, gets the promotion to St. Louis to run Busch Stadium. How was that move met by you and the other family members, and how did you adapt? And I have to think it's probably pretty cool to go from walking into Hammons Field to walking into Busch Stadium whenever you wanted to.
I will say, though, a lot harder to walk around Busch Stadium without people noticing. I got in trouble for that, I think, one of the first weeks he got the job, because I was so used to, when I was young, just walking around Hammons Field. Everyone kind of knew who I was. They knew who my dad was. And then within the first week, I used the card of my dad is Matt Gifford. And he said, if you ever say that once again, I'm having them call the police on you, and you can deal with that instead. So that was the unfortunate part, was I had to learn early on that I couldn't play that card anymore. Yeah. But I think my dad will be the first to tell you. I mean, Busch Stadium is just like Hammons Field, but with a much larger capacity and a lot more fans and probably a lot more FBI agents that he has to work with on a day in and day out basis. But no, I mean, I honestly would probably took the move the worst out of the entire family. Again, that just comes with being a teenager and being in 8th grade at the time. And I had my group of friends, and I thought I was going to have that group of friends for the next 4 years, or, make some more friends in high school. So to make that sudden change was kind of crazy. But, I think my parents and, my sister were very supportive in the fact that, they believed that I could be successful wherever we were, whether that was in Springfield, whether that was in St. Louis. I ended up going to Indiana for boarding school in high school. So that was a little bit of a different experience. But, I still am very, very fortunate that we made that move, because it kind of opened my eyes to new places and new experiences. And honestly, if it weren't for that move, I may not have ever made the decision to go to Syracuse, because that was one of my driving forces in making that decision was, okay, ultimately, could I go to an Indiana? Could I go to a Missouri, which are fantastic schools, all things considered, where I have so many friends who go to those schools? Or do I take a chance on a place like Syracuse where I don't know anybody, but I have a chance to make my own path and forge my own way for something I'm very passionate about?
Max, you made a very interesting statement, too, about the professors. I have a family relationship with the Newhouse School of Journalism. My niece was a professor there for many years, and she's since moved over to Rutgers. But I do know that it's one of the toughest schools for journalism. The look at some of the individuals who graduated from there, Costas and people like this, speaks for itself. What did they instill in you? I hope they didn't try to eliminate any of that passion that you have.
No, absolutely not. And I think, if anything, it almost grew the fire within me to try and potentially reach the spots that they have right now, which obviously, those positions are very, far few and in between. And it's funny how so many Syracuse people end up falling into those different positions. But I think the thing that they reinforced in me most is that, one, it's not going to be handed to you. You really have to do the work to put yourself in a position to succeed. And it's also important to know that, especially at Syracuse, only so much learning can be done in the classroom, especially from a sports journalism perspective. You can do as much homework, you can write as many papers as you want about the subject, but it ultimately comes down to, okay, can you actually call the game? Can you actually report the game? Can you actually do all the miscellaneous things that go into working a sporting event, whether that's college or professional? And whether it's in the different TV stations, the radio stations, the newspapers, they all sort of set you up to get all of those reps, even though, again, they're very far few and in between, because there are so many people who fight for those reps. They ultimately try to make sure that each rep you get is as good as it can be, so that you're ready once you step into the real world.
That's a very, very good point that you bring up. How much versatility did they teach you as far as, now, obviously your passion sports, but did they tell you, hey, Max Gifford, you've got to concentrate on maybe politics or something along that line? Was that enforced?
Funny enough, I had someone tell me very early on that if you wanted to be a sports guy, that you should try to stay in the sports lane. And actually, one of KY3's own, Jerry Jacobs, is also, he was one of the first to tell me, don't let them try to get you into a wormhole of going down too much of a producer route or a news route, because if you really want to do sports, you should be passionate about doing sports. And to me, that was always the case. I was lucky that I got some experience doing some news stuff, doing some producing stuff. But I ultimately always had in the back of my head, okay, I really want to try and do sports. And funny enough, I've always said I've always wanted to do baseball, which was really ironic considering that Syracuse was one of the only ACC schools, and it's still one of the only ACC schools without a baseball team.
Was it a little not really scary, probably not the right word, but you're going into a field that probably fewer and fewer jobs out there with play-by-play broadcasting. It's kind of like kids that wake up now and say, well, I want to be a sports writer. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's great. What are you going to do? Where are you going to work? Because newspapers are shutting down. Was your mindset that, hey, there's X number of baseball teams out there. They all got to have somebody calling play-by-play. I want one of those jobs?
I think the goal was always to try and find my way to baseball, even though, like I said, we didn't have baseball to call at Syracuse. Just because, baseball is where you can get the most reps and where you can really feel like you're part of the team every day because you are calling it every day. And the truth about baseball, and I'm sure Ned knows this better than anyone, but you really have to love the game. Absolutely. If you want to call baseball. Because if you miss one day, it feels like you've missed an entire month or an entire year of a season. And I think that's what stands out most to me is the fact that there's always something new to talk about every day you come out to the ballpark. I started a running note in my notes app about the random things that I've seen in baseball games this year because it's a reminder to me that, that there may be days where, I wake up a little tired or, maybe my voice isn't in the best shape. And the reality is you never know what you're going to see every day you walk into the ballpark and every time you put on that headset.
Oh, Max, you just said it too. It's an everyday deal. And to that end, do you have other duties with the Biloxi Ball Club?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the thing that I've always told anyone about my position so far is, broadcasting is almost my reward for everything else I do throughout the day. I start up very early in the morning. I'm doing the game notes. Followed that up, if we're at home, I'm doing all the stat packs. I'm doing the lineup sheets as well. We're handing those out to all the media members. We're handing that out to all the broadcasters and our production crew as well. And then I'm sure there's a chunk before the game where we're going down, we're talking to the players, we're talking to the coaches, trying to get fresh material for the game because there's only so much we can talk about that's on a stat sheet, that's on numbers. I always say you don't want to be the math teacher on a broadcast, just regurgitating so many numbers. You want to make the numbers mean something. And, I always say a personal story about a player or a quote from a player is worth 1,000 stats a lot of the times. So those are sort of how my days are separated. I've developed a pretty good routine down here, so still getting good opportunities to, whether it's, just, I guess, stay, socially active, just making sure that I'm keeping up with others from school, home, calling family. We were lucky, I guess lucky, not lucky. Cardinals got postponed yesterday as well as the Biloxi Shuckers. So my dad and I got to catch up after the game yesterday. So just a good time. There's a good time in between as well to make sure that I'm keeping up on my own personal relationships in addition to relationships within the workplace.
Well, Max, you couldn't have landed in a better spot in terms of quality of teams and organizations. Milwaukee rated the number one farm system in baseball coming into the year. The Brewers, they draft well, they promote well, they get really good kids and get them up there quickly. Your Biloxi team won the first half of the Southern League. You got guys like Jesus Made on there. Andrew Fisher just came up, I think. Blake Burke, the last two from Tennessee. Got to be a lot of fun being around these guys. It's a pretty good idea they're going to be playing a long time in the major leagues.
And it's crazy to think that, I grew up watching the Cardinal Way, and I'm still watching the Cardinal Way on full display. And I think we saw the success that, that forged, for the Cardinals for so many years, watching guys down in Springfield and through the system, because that's how the Cardinals became successful. It's really cool to see, especially in the Southern League, teams like the Brewers and the Rays, how they've started developing a lot of talent, and two teams that have historically not won, but with all these guys they have coming up, it's going to be hard to contend with them in the next couple of seasons. And especially with the lineup this Shuckers team is rolling out right now. You mentioned first half Southern League South Division champions. they might be better in the second half, which is crazy to think about. They're currently rolling out what my partner and I have deemed the death lineup, which includes 4 top 15 prospects in the top 5, and you mentioned a couple of them there. Jesus Madej, the number 1 prospect in baseball, that guy is as advertised, and it's insane to see what he's doing at just a spry 19 years old. And it's so crazy to think he's 19 years old. He drove in 50 in the first half, and for reference, Jackson Churio drove in, I think, 87 in the entire season, so Madej is on pace to shatter that. Wow. Andrew Fisher just came up. His first 4 hits were all extra base hits. Josh Adamczewski is an absolute stud out and left, and he is hitting every single ball 105, 105 miles an hour or more. And then Blake Burke is another guy you talked about. I like to call him the reincarnation of Matt Adams, who still today is probably my favorite player I've ever seen down in Springfield. You want to talk about a guy that just, eat, breathe, and sleeps baseball, former Tennessee Volunteer. He hits the cover off the baseball, but he's also just a really competitive guy. And to me, that just screamed Matt Adams through and through. And he's also oddly really good defensively at first base, which is something that, I always remember thinking about when it came to Matt Adams. Not only was he, your power hitter you could always go to when he needed a hit, but he played some pretty solid defense over at first as well.
He was an interesting individual, to say the very least. I remember a game in early May that we were televising when he was with us. It was unusually cold. Temperature was about in the mid-40s. Came out for the pregame interview. He's in short pants, in Bermuda shorts. I said, hey, man, it's cold. What cold? We're ready to play baseball. And I thought, this is a great attitude. Is your radio partner down in Biloxi also a Syracuse guy?
Funny enough, he went to Elon University. Yeah, Elon. And he likes to joke he's one of the few people on the alumni board of broadcasters at Elon. But, I was lucky that he took a chance on me, and this is his 4th season with the club, and he's been doing fantastic work so far. And it's been fun to work with him, especially to kind of gain perspective from somebody who didn't go to Syracuse like I did. And it's fun for kind of us to exchange stories, whether that is about his time in Biloxi. I always tell him about old stories in Springfield and watching old guys play. So we're both sort of baseball nerds. I think we both clicked very early on that front. I think he texted Jeff Levering after he interviewed me. We had that mutual connection at the time, and he ended up, I think, sending Jeff just a picture of talking to a mirror, because that's how he felt after we talked. Just 2 guys that are baseball nerds through and through. And, I hope for all our Biloxi fans' sake that we try to make sure that is echoed in our broadcast, just kind of our nerdiness, but also our love for the game.
I had a text question from an M. Gifford in St. Louis. Said to ask about the celebrating the first half championship on Sunday, and when was the last time you were part of a clubhouse celebration?
Oh, wow. I wonder who M. Gifford could possibly be. There's a couple of them in my family, but it's a good question because it's a funny answer as well. Because I think I told them this last week. The last time I would have celebrated any sort of championship in a celebration setting, 2012 Springfield Cardinals first Texas League championship. Mike Schilt, Brian Eversgerd were very nice enough to bring me into the coach's room for a second and douse me in the non-alcoholic champagne and the sparkling grape juice. Still a bottle, I think, that is sitting on my dresser today because of the great memories I have down there with that awesome 2012 Cardinals team, which had Colton Wong, Oscar Taveras, Chris Swager, one of my favorites at that time in Springfield. So, Mike Schilt and Schilty and Gertie dumping me with the non-alcoholic champagne was the last time that I got to enjoy a celebration like that. So definitely was bittersweet on Sunday to do the same.
I think Swager went into coaching too, did he not?
Yes, he did. I believe he was with Johnson City for a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if he still is coaching, but man, that was a guy that you loved watching every day in the outfield. And those are the guys that make minor league baseball really what it was.
Max, what are your favorite parks in the Southern League so far? And have you adapted to Biloxi where it's never humid and it's always a cool 50 degrees, right?
It's interesting because up in Syracuse, it was always raining and super cold.
Yeah.
And I always joke, people said, oh, you're from Missouri. You never experienced stuff like this. And I always made the argument to them, well, in Missouri, we kind of always get the best of both worlds, right? It's either really hot, too hot for comfort, or it's also really cold at times. But also, I say being at Busch Stadium in a 114-degree day, there's some experiences that you don't like to go back to, and unfortunately, those 114-degree days at Busch can sometimes be tough. But Biloxi's certainly interesting just because of that humidity. But the weather this first half was pretty horrendous. The Shuckers had 4 games canceled, and I believe we had 21 postponements. It's 22 with yesterday's up to this point. So there's been a lot of rain as well, which hasn't been fun, but definitely makes me appreciative of when we do play baseball down here. As far as ballpark rankings are right now, I would say Huntsville up in Rocket City, Toyota Field has probably been my favorite. There's 2 that I haven't been to yet that I need to see before I do my final ranking, because I've heard Knoxville is a beautiful ballpark in Tennessee with the Smokies, even though I know we probably can't say that since it's a Cubs affiliate. But Chattanooga also just got a new ballpark, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing in about a month times or so, just because it's a brand new ballpark, so Shuckers have yet to play there yet.
Max, correct me if I'm wrong. You played hockey quite a bit. Are there any hockey franchises down there?
So they actually had a franchise down here for a cup of tea while I lived down here. They actually just folded, but there's still some teams in the area from some of the lower levels of the professional hockey rankings. But you're right, they play hockey right down the road from Hammonds Field at MediaCom Ice Park with the Springfield Spirit, 2-time state champion, partly thanks to that one nice guy named M. Gifford who chimed in on your text line. He was a coach for both of those teams. So, yes, proud of my hockey roots, especially down in Springfield, and still love hockey today.
Max, we appreciate your time. You're already the best Gifford we've ever interviewed. We'll just say that now. But no, we love your dad and just, the professionalism he had in his job the entire time we got to watch him down here. That had to help you kind of form the base of what you're doing now, doesn't it?
Well, he likes to brag that he's a Missouri Sports Hall of Famer now, and he tries to use that at the dinner table to try and brag to us about, who gets like the last cookie at dinner. He says that, I'm a Missouri Sports Hall of Famer. So he likes to kind of wave that, I guess that over our heads. But I think I can now wave over his head the fact that I'm the best interview for you guys.
Very good. Very good.
I think that's a better thing to boast about.
Hey, good luck with the rest of the season with Biloxi, and we look forward to following you in your career and having you on more often. Thanks, Max.
I appreciate you, gentlemen. Thanks so much for having me.
He is Max Gifford and Matt up in St. Louis. If you're listening in, it's always great to have the Giffords on the air here.
Absolutely.
Well done, Max. Very well done. We'll take a time out on the starting lineup. Back in a second. And the starting lineup is brought to you by Played Again Sports, by Swing Right Golf, by Marshfield Chevrolet, and by Citizens Bank of Rogersville. We have another segment coming up in a second.
We do, yeah. JVT, Jonathan Von Tobel, going to join us from the VSiN Network here at the bottom of the hour, 8:30, so we'll get to that here in a second. But really cool to catch up, and you're almost a little sad and joyful at the same time as seeing a kid you watched as a little kid walk around the ballpark, and now he's that professional and that good on an interview.
Now, Papa is 6'7", 6'6", 6'7", somewhere
big
around
guy,
there.
Yeah.
Did Max follow through?
Max was kind of tall and lanky, but I haven't seen him, physically since he was here as an 8th grader.
Exactly.
And he was tall then. I remember him running track, I think. I saw him out on the ice with hockey a little bit too and stuff because my son was trying that at the same time. But, yeah, really cool to see a kid that has a dream and follows through with it. He wanted to be a baseball guy, and he's in a great place now.
And, Scott, he also brought up what the director of the North Carolina agency that handles the broadcasters around the state told us the other day. Getting into this business, you better have, and it's the same with sports writer, you better have the passion to do it.
Yeah, and then that Brewers farm system's loaded. I mean, he talked about Madej, 19 years old, and what he's doing. He's the number 1 overall prospect in the minors right now with the Griffin kid going up to Pittsburgh. And then the other guys. And Milwaukee, they're stacked, and they're going to be stacked for a few years now. Matter of fact, they may be one of those teams at the trade deadline that's dealing some prospects for some guy, like a Tariq Skubal who's ready now. We'll have to wait and see. Let's go ahead and take our time out, and that way we can tee up JVT when we come back and talk some betting guide, NFL futures, and more.
You're listening to the starting lineup. Don't go away. More coming up. And it is a great pleasure to have you with us on the starting lineup as we begin the stretch run of our show. Big show lined up, big guests coming up here. Our sponsors are, of course, Play It Again Sports, Swing Right Golf, Citizens Bank of Rogersville, and Marshfield Chevrolet. Ned Reynolds along with
Scott Purrier. And as promised, wiping the sleep from his eyes as we watch him here on camera, he is JVT, Jonathan Von Tobel, one of our favorite guests. And of course, we're very proud to be a part of the VSiN Network. And I've decided that, we've had probably 10 to 12 guests on that Michelle lines up for us. JVT is probably number one on the rankings in terms of guys you want to have a beer with. It sounds like you'd be a lot of fun to have two or three with and just talk sports. Am I accurate with that?
I think I'll answer it with this, with another question that might give you some insight. Why only two or tee? Right?
And there you go. There's your answer.
Now he is talking my language.
Yeah, and of course, JVT is the co-host of Money Moves at 1 o'clock on our time here on the network. He and Stormy Buonantoni go back and forth and love the banner there. Do you win most of those battles, you feel like, with her?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the problem with Stormy is, as I tell her all the time, it's really easy to get her to start to leak confidence. The second you start going at her, she starts to back down. There's a couple of times, though, where I think I've been brought on to balance her out very nicely, and she's become progressively meaner, which I think has been my goal throughout our time together.
Is she a diva to work with or not?
Surprisingly not. I will give her credit, and I do enjoy working with Stormy. I'd never tell her to her face, but she is very easy to work with. Despite she's got some bougie taste when it comes to travel and some thoughts there, but when it comes to work, she's relatively easy to work with.
Well, Jonathan Von Tobel with VSiN, we're here to talk about how do we cure the summertime blues with betting. Missouri is a new state to online sports betting back in December. We're kind of in that period of, we don't really bet a lot of World Cup because we don't know what we're doing. The major sports are kind of in the lull. Football's around the corner. That's where the betting guide for VSiN that's out now as part of the VSiN Pro Network is great reading material to prepare for futures bets, NFL. That's kind of probably your recommendation, I would think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's worth it. You can check it out and you go to VSiN.com/subscribe. We've got a great special going on as well. You can sign up all the way through the Super Bowl. And I always like to remind people, I know we're talking about the summer, but when you sign up, that includes everything we do until the end of the Super Bowl, which is February. So we're talking about the start of the NHL season, Major League NBA, the new season that's going to start, like all of these things that are in between and all the content that's included. But I think it's an incredible read. Our buddy and managing editor, Adam Burke, does a great job. I think, to invoke Stormy one more time, as she put it, herding cats, getting all of us to get our information together and putting it in the guide and talking about all the different futures that we like. And I think that's the important perspective of it is it's, I think a lot of people look at sports betting content and say, well, am I just taking this all in and tailing it? No, it's a smorgasbord of information that you can then use yourself to see what you like, what you don't, and use it accordingly. And I think the NFL Guide does a really good job with that. Also, every single one of these divisions, all written by different people. I personally wrote the AFC East, so you get a lot of different perspectives as well of what you're looking at with some of these teams and just different ways to handicap and some really great feature articles too. One of my favorites is the one that Adam Burke wrote about betting win totals in the National Football League. And I think it might surprise some of your audience that when you look at win totals in the NFL, generally those win totals, you're either hitting it or missing it by about 1.5 to 2 wins every single year. So that means that you can bet some of these alternate win totals, and you can actually get some plus prices on those, whether it's over or under. So a lot of really great smart information in there.
John, it really is. It's something that everybody has to have. My question is, can you only order it online, or is it available in other agencies as well?
It is only as part of a VSiN Pro subscription, so it just comes with a subscription, so it gets everything that we talked about. This year it is not a la carte, so you're going to have to subscribe as part of being a VSiN Pro subscriber, getting everything we do on top of the guides.
JVT, wanted to ask you, this is a big Kansas City Chiefs area here, and looking through the guide, and I think I counted down that they are the 12th rated team in the power ratings going in. Most of the VSiN people picked them to win the AFC West. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs? And I saw the over-under win totals 9.5. Where are you going with that?
I mean, it starts with, and it seems the betting market is heading in that direction, and it seems like the Chiefs are espousing it too. Is Patrick Mahomes going to be healthy by the time the year starts? I think is always going to be an interesting question because there seems to be a belief that he's just going to be ready to go. And I guess I would tend to think that way. Obviously, with Fields there too, I kind of trust Andy Reid to get the most out of all of his guys, and so that would probably be one that you're going to get really good efforts out of if he is forced to play. But I do think this team, given what they have coming back defensively and obviously the production they can have on offense, I think that they're going to be one of the better teams in the AFC, and I think that they're primed to win the AFC West again. I'm not a big Denver Broncos guy when it comes to the way that they're going to come into this year. Bo Nix is dealing with his own injuries. I also think that if you look at some of the underlying metrics with Nix, there's some really good signs of regression for him to kind of come back to earth. And even then, he wasn't even statistically dominant last year. And that defense at the end of the year, not in the postseason, but at the regular season, really started leaking oil. And they were a really average defensive group. I'm a fan of the Chargers. I think they're probably the second best team in that division. And then, of course, I'm out here in Las Vegas, so we know about the Raiders and their rebuild that they're going through right now. It seems to be a perennial rebuild over and over again. But I think the Chiefs are in a really good spot. If Mahomes comes back and shows real no rust from that injury whatsoever, that they're going to win that division. And I think they're going to be up there with my personal favorite in the AFC, the Cincinnati Bengals, as well as the Ravens and others, to compete and potentially win that conference.
And you have the Bengals in the Super Bowl, is that correct?
I do. So this is back at SoFi, right, in L.A., and we get a rematch, at least according to me, of that Super Bowl against the Rams, except this time I have the Bengals winning that thing. I think when you look at Cincinnati and their investments in the defense at safety with Cook, you go out and you get Dexter Lawrence, Boye Mafe as well at edge. Like, they did such a good job at addressing, I think, what was their biggest weakness, which was obviously their defense. And you could say that, hey, look, Joe Burrow's never been healthy. Why would you trust it? I keep invoking Matthew Stafford in that regard. If you remember at the beginning of Matthew Stafford's career, he was injury prone, and nobody really trusted that he was going to be available. Now he's considered an Iron Man that never misses time. I mean, last year he won MVP, and at the beginning of the year we were talking about whether or not his back was going to work. So I do think that there is, law of averages at some point. Joe Burrow, with all these hard contact injuries, is going to give us a full season. If he does, that is the best wide receiver core in the National Football League. That is the best offense in the NFL. And with a defense that I just need to climb to average to, I think, be one of the better teams in a AFC North that I think is pretty soft at the bottom, I think the Bengals are really primed to have one of those years. And to bring it back to what we're talking about, some of those feature articles, not just betting over 10.5, but over 11.5 at an alternate price of over 2-1, asking them to win the most games in the National Football League and have the best record, I think, is in the cards because they have the third easiest schedule in the NFL, and getting Joe Burrow at 10-1 or better to win MVP. I'm really all in on what the Bengals could be this year.
John, because I'm from that part of the country, my team is the Philadelphia Eagles, and I noticed that most of your partners have picked the Eagles to win the NFC East, but you did not. You picked the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this Cowboys offense, and I'm always open to changing my perception with presented with new information, right? That's always a good thing. And a lot of us, and I was one of them, I think we kind of mocked the Cowboys for the hire of Brian Schottenheimer, what that offense was, and the team was going to look like. And then you go into that last year, and very quietly, if you looked at some of the metrics, well, first off, they were just generally one of the best offenses in the NFL in terms of efficiency. But if you looked at some of the more granular stuff, like, for example, expected points added per play on scripted drives, so generally the first 20 plays of a game, this is one of the most efficient offenses in the National Football League. He was a very good game planner. He's really good at calling plays. Dak Prescott's one of the better NFL quarterbacks. He doesn't get enough respect for what he does. You look at what they were able to do on that end, and I really trust them. And it's similar to what we see here with the Cincinnati Bengals through the draft and through other additions. I thought they did a good job in investing in what was the worst defense by EPA standards in the NFL last year. I don't know if they're going to be a dominant defensive group, but they should be better with a really good offense. I trust that they're going to be able to get this thing done, and I think they're a little underrated coming into this year. And Dak himself, again, in the range of about 15-1 to win MVP, I think that's going to be a very, very good offense and a very good team by extension.
Visiting with Jonathan Von Tobel of the VSiN Network, JVT as he's known throughout the network, and another team that you're apparently very high on, the Atlanta Falcons. In terms of a betting perspective, you've got them covering both the over of the win total 6.5, and then also winning the South Division.
Yeah, I'm a Kevin Stefanski believer, man. I think that Stefanski got a raw deal out there in Cleveland, mainly because his roster stunk. And then at one point, they just go, you know what, here's Deshaun Watson. Figure this out. And I don't think that he really wanted that. He is a great offensive mind. He obviously got that team to the postseason at one point, multiple-time Coach of the Year winner as well. I think that now in this division where you're talking about a winnable group. I mean, in our guide, I think 7 picked the Saints, and then 6 picked the Falcons, 6 picked the Buccaneers, and then 4 picked the Panthers. It kind of goes to the fact that it's a wide-open division, whoever's going to win that thing. But I really like Stefanski. And then you get to why and what else is there. I think we've gone a little too far, potentially, on the Tua Tagovailoa narrative. This guy was on the fringe of multiple MVP races in his time in Miami when he was really firing on all cylinders. And the common thread is it was part of an offense and an offensive mind of Mike McDaniel that really can get the most out of quarterbacks. And I think that's what Stefanski is. And in fact, I think Stefanski's better than Mike McDaniel. So you get Tua, who I assume is going to win this job, much like Kyler Murray in Minnesota potentially, or we've seen Geno Smith in the past with Seattle, Sam Darnold, when he's done. And getting that quarterback to revitalize his career. Mike Holtz, by the way, should mention Daniel Jones as well among those quarterbacks. And I think Tua is going to do a really good job. And think about it, if he does win that job and if he is in control of this offense, it's so much better than when he was in Miami. He's playing indoors. He's got these skill positions. He's playing in a division that he's not going to have to go to Buffalo and play outside or New England and play outside, which was kind of his bugaboo at the tail end of his career and at times with the Miami Dolphins. I think it sets up really nicely for the Falcons. So I like them a lot, as you mentioned. And look, it's a very, very, very long shot, but you can get Tua to win MVP in the range of 150 to 1. Put a little on that too, because I think he's going to have a really strong year.
Sean, what were your odds and VSiN's odds on the NFL pulling the plug on the supplementary draft and keeping Sorsby out of there?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I guess, the odds, we probably in hindsight should have thought a little bit more that they were going to do that, only because the NFL, first up, likes to make things up as they go along. But second, you look at the fact that they kind of like to pull these weird, I don't know what you want to call them, integral moves where it's just it's a privilege to play in the National Football League for whatever reason it is. I don't understand what they try to do at times. It's absolutely ridiculous that they do this. I was surprised that they wanted to try to give him a year suspension, basically, even though we're watching what's going on in the National Football League, Terrion Arnold, and what recently happened. To invoke the Chiefs one more time, I watched Rashee Rice get out of jail and then run so he didn't have to talk to anybody on camera, and yet we're going to sit here and talk about the morality of sports betting, which I think is so weird for the NFL.
You said you wrote the AFC East preview for the VSiN betting guide. That's an interesting division because, the Bills made some additions there. DJ Moore coming over maybe to give Josh Allen an actual receiver. The Patriots with all the offseason moves and the news with Mike Vrabel. The Jets look like they're going to be better. The Dolphins are going to be awful. Is that pretty much the division in a nutshell in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you nailed it. I think my I guess it's a little bit of a hot take is I think people are going to be surprised how few wins it would take to win that division this year. You look at the Buffalo Bills, for example, and they were my division winner, and I think 20 of the 23 of us picked Buffalo to win that thing, despite the Patriots, of course, winning 14 games and returning a lot of the personnel and investing at the skill positions in a really big way as well. But I do think that Buffalo and New England do have some questions in a big way. For New England, it's just the step up in competition. You look at their defense, for example. They played one team last year that finished better than 13th in expected points added on offense. They were playing a lot of really bad offenses. The other way around, too. We saw Drake May play a lot of really bad defenses, and then he got into the postseason, and he played all opponents who finished 7th or higher in expected points added per play on defense, and guess what happened? He completed less than 60% of his passes. He threw 405 interceptions. He fumbled the ball 7 times. The offense really went into the tank, and so I think there's a question of how this team really looks against now a first-place schedule. And for the Buffalo Bills, they lost over 2,600 snaps on defense between 4 players that left in the offseason in some form or fashion. They're changing their defense now from a 4-3 to a 3-4. And I don't know about you guys, but, if I'm firing a head coach and my whole thing is I need something new, I need to change this regime, I don't then promote the offensive coordinator that was there for 2.5 years and on staff for 4, expecting some big changes. And that's exactly what Joe Brady is. So I think that overall, this team is a lot more flawed. I think ultimately they win the division because I trust Josh Allen a little bit more. But I don't know what this is going to look like. And I think about 10 wins, 10-7, I think that could win the AFC East here this year.
Along those same lines, this is not the division that you cover, but does John Harbaugh make a big difference with the New York Giants?
I think so to an extent. I think it helps to have, no slight to the previous staff, but it helps to have an adult in the room to an extent, to have somebody out there that's got the cachet that he has built up a franchise, helped develop a quarterback like Lamar Jackson and whatnot. But I think that maybe the market might be a little too soon on this. And we do see this from time to time. If you go back 2 years ago, a lot of people really high on Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears in his first year, and they really fell flat. And then it was the second year where they bring in Ben Johnson, they make some of the adjustments, he gets a year under his belt, and all of a sudden they really take off. I think this might be one of those instances as well. It's still a pretty tough schedule for them. I think you really question the health of that wide receiver core because we just don't know what that looks like, especially with Neighbors having some struggles with his recovery too. And they're signing like old guys. I think, what was it, like a month ago, they signed like 3 old dudes. There's like Braxton Berrios and Odell Beckham Jr. and all these guys. So I think you're really wondering what the depth of the wide receiver core looks like for them too. I think they're going to be better. I think ATS-wise, they're going to be a really strong team to bet maybe week to week. But I question whether or not they're going to get to that 8-9 win mark that the market thinks they're going to.
JVT, we always appreciate your insight. Before we let you go, are you a fantasy football player? And we need to figure out how, because this will be our first full NFL season of being able to bet online. How do we balance fantasy football with actual gambling and betting on NFL?
I do enjoy fantasy football. You know, I used to be in a fantasy football league with some buddies of mine. But oddly enough, the year that I won, all of a sudden the league disbanded afterwards. So, you know, it's weird how that works. But I do enjoy it. In fact, we do have, I don't think I can say anything concrete, but we will have some fun fantasy football stuff coming down the pike with VSiN in the next month or so when it comes to some of us getting involved as a show and as a network. But I would say that they actually inherently go hand in hand, and that's why we have guys like John Hanson who are on the network during football season because, you know, if you really like fantasy football and you're really paying attention, especially from a DFS standpoint, and you're betting and you're talking about player props. So it really does help you if you're following it from a fantasy football perspective to then dive into some player prop markets. And those two things really do jive together. So I would say that if you do like fantasy football, try your hand at looking at some of those player props that are available every single day in every single game because those two things do mirror each other quite nicely. And if you can find an edge in fantasy, more than likely you're going to be able to find an edge in terms of individual player props.
Very good. Again, we always appreciate it. Hope we can do it again during the season.
Yeah, of course, anytime. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet. Thank you.
John Van Tobel visiting with us from the VSiN Network. Timeout on the starting lineup, and be right back. And we are back with the starting lineup. You know, Scott, listening to these guys and gals from VSiN, they are really top-notch. And I hope our audience realizes how in-depth these people are, and I'm sure they do.
Absolutely. And that guide, Michelle sent us a copy, Michelle Musburger with VSiN, and to kind of preview and promote. And I'll tell you, it's as good as anything I've read in the last 10 years, because I'm a guy that for fantasy football, I've always gone out and bought 2 or 3 magazines. These are their top 20 or 30 experts and their picks and their opinions. It's good stuff. And
it's very similar in a lot of respects. It's not, you can't compare the two because it's a totally different level. But Phil Steele,
yeah,
it's along the same lines with that, very in-depth what they're doing.
Yeah, and we'll have Phil on, of course, sometime in July to talk college football but they, you know, just the over-under win totals, and then they've got the rookie previews and everything else. It's you know, the problem with magazines and you know, Phil's doesn't change as much because the rosters are set, but there's so many things. You know, those magazines go to press sometimes in May and early June. And there's so much in the NFL season between now and late August that can happen that a lot of the information's outdated from the NFL side. And I think that this stuff is very good. And that VSiN Pro subscription, if you're a medium to hardcore gambler on NFL or just really want to kind of see the inside the numbers type stuff, highly encourage people to go to VSiN's website and subscribe.
The guy who put it together, Burke, we've had him.
Adam Burke, yeah.
He was. Well, they're all, every one of them, very articulate, very good, and very much in depth with what they have to say. Burke is one of them.
Well, and I didn't know this until JVT said that, but it's not just football. You know, you get hockey, you get the baseball during the playoffs, and you get the NBA start of the season. I think he said it goes through February.
I think you said that, yes.
Yeah, and stuff, so check that out.
But the only way you get it is by
being a subscriber of that VSiN Pro membership, if you will. I would think that if you pay attention to it throughout the year, you're probably going to make your money back. If you're not, you're just a really crappy gambler. If you're not able to.
You're talking to them.
Yeah, exactly. So, big weekend of sports coming up. You know, the Wimbledon, where are we with that now?
Wimbledon starts, the main draw starts on Sunday.
Okay.
Now, they're doing the pairings this weekend. I'm really interested to see who Serena Williams gets paired with in the singles, because she is going to play out of a wild card, and that will usually mean playing a qualifier. Be interesting to see how come on, she's a 23-time Grand Slam champ, been out of the game for 4 years, but now coming back, and she's just the type of athlete to really make a big dent in what they do.
Have some breaking news. According to ESPN, the Mets have fired manager Carlos Mendoza. New York was off to a 34-47 start. Former Padres manager Andy Green will step in as interim manager for the remainder of the season. That's a team that spent a lot of money in the offseason and hasn't had a lot of results to show for it.
What are they, the third, I think, second or third highest payroll in all of Major League Baseball? And look at what, and of course, they got Soto on there, and that's a major part of their salary right there. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the offseason make a big change in that, have a salary dump all across Major League Baseball.
And, again, they just got Francisco Lindor back. They got Francisco Alvarez back about a week ago. So, you kind of feel for the guy because your expectations were high, but you didn't have the guys that you could get it done for you. Their pitching's not been very good. The kid, I think he's second year, Nolan McLean, that they were really counting on. He's hit the skids here in about the last month. Injuries, but that's part of baseball, and that's why guys get fired. It doesn't matter if they don't win, who they have or who they don't have. You got to get it done.
Did the Cubs sweep them at Citi Field? I think they did.
Yeah. I know Dansby Swanson drove in like 11 runs in a doubleheader at one of those games. The Cubs are another team that they have literally no pitching. They picked up the Peterson kid from New York, who's probably one of the worst in baseball with ERA right now. It just kind of shows the state of their pitching because every time they get somebody back, they get somebody hurt.
I'm still not convinced that team's not going to come on in the second half and play very well. For one thing, things are going to get warm up at Wrigley Field. It hasn't been very warm there this year, and once it does, hey, that ball starts flying, and they've got the people to produce.
They do, and they've got some guys that have underachieved. Alex Bregman's been a disappointment so far for what they paid to get him over there. I really like the Brewers to hold off the Cubs. The Brewers, they've got the organization, they've got depth, they've got prospects they can trade.
Look on the schedule. Aren't they playing the Cubs this weekend?
The Brewers and Cubs?
I'm not sure, but I thought it's either forthcoming or it's right now.
Let's see. Friday, the Cubbies. There's the White Sox and the
Royals.
Royals. Yeah, the Cubs are at Milwaukee. Yeah, big series.
In Milwaukee.
That'll be
what
fun.
Used to be Coors Field, but no, that's Denver. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Royals at the White Sox. Cardinals had the Marlins coming in. Marlins have been one of the better teams in the National League over the last month.
They have good pitching on their team, too. And in fact, the Meyer kid gets the call tonight. We're out of time.
Yeah.
Great having you with us, folks, on the starting lineup. Ned Reynolds along with
Scott Purrier.
And, of course, Ford Art Haynes will be back with us. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday right here.
See ya.